Professor Dr. Isserow, welcome to the show.
Thank
Uh,
you for having me.
so, Professor Isserow has been working as a contemporary philosopher at Notre Dame, specifically focusing on topics like uh, moral authority, hypocrisy, and friendship. And today she's joined us, so that's really, really cool. Kind of diving in right into the topic. So, the first question I have is about moral hypocrisy and how it relates to the two Quoque fallacy, which is how it can relate and whether the logical fallacies and kind of the morality, if they operate in separate realms.
Yeah, really good question. I think hypocrisy definitely is related to that fallacy.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, I think it is. So I guess we have to start with hypocrisy, right? So what
Mm-hmm.
it is. I mean, people will disagree upon the details, but the kind of glossy version is hypocrisy is about sort of saying one thing and doing another.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a sort of satisfying full definition, but a kind of case would be where, I see you littering and I criticize you for this and I blame you for it and I tell you no one should under any circumstances be littering. And then you see me throwing wrappers on the grass all the time and littering myself. So that looks a bit hypocritical of me then that I'm blaming you for it. When I'm saying you shouldn't do it and I'm doing it myself. So a lot of people would say, well, it's really about sort of standing up for values that you don't fully stand for, right? I'm standing up for the value of environmentalism, but I don't stand for it. Look at me littering
And that would be
everywhere.
the more, I think I read the more like symmetrical view.
Yeah, so I guess there's different things we can mean by symmetry. One thing we might mean is whether there's a symmetry between me blaming you for something I've done
Mm-hmm.
and between me blaming you for something I've never done but would do. So some people think those are like both kinds of hypocrisy. We should kind of view them symmetrically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Other people like me think there's an asymmetry there. I think it's clearly hypocrisy when I've littered and I blame you for littering. I think it's less clearly hypocrisy if I've never littered and
I
I
see.
blame you for littering.
Yeah.
And I would do it, but I had never have. I think that's more questionable. But if we connect, we have like a working idea of what hypocrisy is. And now the question is, how about the two Quoque fallacy? So I think the two Quoque fallacy, it's often, suppose you see me littering
Mm-hmm.
and you give me this brilliant argument about why people shouldn't litter. Right? It's a flawless argument. No one can disagree with it reasonably. And then my response to you is just to go, well, you litter.
Yeah.
And suppose it's true, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm doing there is I'm basically calling you a hypocrite, right? You
Yeah.
litter, but you believe me for littering. That's not okay. Sort of pot calling the kettle black kind of thing, or look who's talking is the kind of response. Now, the reason that's supposed to be a fallacy is because it's just not a good response to the substance of the argument.
It's kind of just
It's,
dodging it. Yeah. It's,
yeah,
well, I would say it is the primary argument that I've used with my other five siblings when I was younger, but I've been trying to stray away from it.
yeah. So I think you're right. It's like a kind of refusal to engage with the
Mm-hmm.
substance of the argument. So rather than say to you, well, maybe littering isn't always wrong, blah blah blah, and I engage with the argument, I
Mm-hmm.
just deflect attention to you, the person making the argument.
Yeah.
Now, the reason it's a fallacy is just because you're a litterer doesn't mean you haven't put forward a good argument against littering. That
Of
doesn't
course.
follow,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, Still, some people think there are ways that it might not be a fallacy depending how you carry it out.
Mm-hmm.
So, suppose now you're criticizing me for flying, right? You say it's really bad for the environment to fly. No one should be flying,
Mm-hmm.
which is a pretty extreme position, right? Um, but suppose that no one should ever fly. I mean, maybe it's not extreme. Some people might think it's the right result. But
Yeah.
suppose now that when you give me this brilliant argument why I shouldn't fly, I say to you, "Will you fly?" Now, I might be not trying to deflect there, but trying to draw attention to something, right? I
Mm-hmm.
might be trying to draw attention to the fact that this moral principle you're outlining, no one should ever fly, that can't be a genuine moral principle because it's way too demanding, right? It's unreasonable, right?
Mm-hmm.
To ask people never to fly. Strong, and my evidence it's too strong is look, you can't even live up to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be a way that you might not be quite committing the two Quoque fallacy, but trying to make a genuine argumentative mood
I see.
by saying, yeah. So that's a way I think you could say, look, I'm not calling you a hypocrite per se. I'm not drawing attention to you per se. I'm using your failures as evidence that the moral principle you're espousing is just unreasonably demanding and not a plausible principle.
Hmm.
So I think that's why you might be able to get around the accusation you're committing a fallacy if you're using it in that way.
I see. But I think that's really cool to know about. But I was also wondering when it comes to the person who um is kind of he's the one who is being condemned. Would it make sense also that he loses both the moral authority because he's the one who did it, as well as maybe he becomes lesser of authority to say much of anything just because um, he's also one who lives by that standard. Maybe it breaks down his kind of ability to argue, and um, separate from just moral topic, it's that he is honestly not a good he's not a good source anymore.
Yeah, so you might think, suppose I take something a bit more serious, like adultery, right? And suppose like, which is not true. Suppose I cheated on my husband multiple times, which I have not. But like, let's just suppose I had,
Yeah.
right? Um, and now suppose like a mutual friend of ours is cheating on their partner,
Hmm.
and I start telling them off. I think you might think you have no authority in this area, right? We shouldn't respect your opinion. Like, what would you know about the morality of being faithful? I mean, there's something to that thought, I take it.
I
But
see.
you might also think we don't want to commit the two Quoque fallacy when we say that I can't be putting forward good arguments against adultery. I might be putting forward excellent arguments.
Hmm.
But we might still think that what we're doing there isn't dismissing my arguments, perhaps. I think the complaint in hypocrisy, if it's going to be a genuine complaint, can't just be the hypocrites incapable of putting forward good moral arguments, because I think this doesn't follow necessarily, right?
Hmm.
As we've seen, but we might still think there's something morally objectionable, and this is what a lot of philosophers do think. There's something morally objectionable about hypocritical blame. If I'm a serial adulterer, there's something morally objectionable about me blaming someone who does the same thing.
Yeah.
They have a complaint against me that I'm doing that to them. And it'd
Hmm.
be one thing if I calmly and dispassionately, said, well, this isn't very good. We shouldn't do it. I've done this myself. I'm a failure in this regard as well.
Hmm.
They might not have an objection against me then, right? But if I take up this moral posture as though I have the moral standing to blame them and to deliver this harsher form of criticism, then I think they can say, you don't get to stand up for these values, right? Because you don't stand for them. You're not committed to them at
Hmm.
all. So you don't get to blame me, right? Maybe you get to put forward like calm, reasoned arguments and to engage me in conversation, but you don't get
Yeah.
to engage with me that.
Yeah, I think in many ways that does kind of reconcile the thought that I had because I think obviously when I was younger, everyone likes to play the oh you're a hypocrite card because it's very easy and it's very fun to play, and especially when you're younger and you have uh, possibly less self control and you have certain proclivities and certain propensities towards um, whatever. Anybody can play that game now because it's like they all kind of commit these acts. So it's like, oh, it's like this is like a playground of using hypocrisy. But I think now I think I really like your response because it does kind of show that there is kind of a moral agent involved, and there is this also other element which is the logical element that's involved. So kind of going deeper into hypocrisy, I want to move on to my next topic, which is when a person can regain moral authority to condemn someone. And I guess to start off, how do you define moral authority?
Yeah, so I think there's different ways to think about this. So I think a lot of people think there's a sense in which you don't have like, people will use words like the entitlement, the standing, the right, the authority to blame someone when either you're guilty of the relevant wrong yourself or you're no more committed to them than they are,
I see.
right?
Hmm.
And people use different sort of phrases there or fill in. So I think in a previous paper, co author with Colin Klein, I think we were talking about hypocrisy as a matter of moral authority,
Hmm.
um, where, your kind of testimony would be, well, much of testimony would be taken seriously, that you can actually give people reasons and, you have the standing to kind of like offer this contribution to their practical conversation
Hmm.
and to inform what they practically ought to do. And the idea is that when you're a hypocrite, you kind of lose that standing.
I
Um,
see.
I think we were trying to be ecumenical and account for lots of different versions of hypocrisy. I think I might prefer the way people and me in later papers talk about it in terms of having a standing to blame someone, and hypocrisy being something that undermines your standing.
Hmm.
And your standing being like a right that you might have, but that you can lose and regain. So, if I litter all the time, then I have no right to blame you for littering,
Hmm.
right? That would be wronging you, right? I don't get to stand up for values I don't properly stand for.
Yeah.
But you might think that suppose I turn over a new moral leaf, right? Suppose I start really joining all these environmental activism
Hmm.
causes and my dark past of littering starts to kind of fade away and be replaced by this lovely track record of helping the environment.
Hmm.
At that stage, you might think my standing to blame you has been regained, right? That now I do have the standing to blame you
It does kind of
because
seem like
I,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Sorry
I
for.
think that's what I would intuitively say. That's okay. I think the way you might account for that is saying that, yeah, now I am committed to these values, so I do get to stand up for them.
Hmm.
Uh, I do have the right to stand up for them.
Yeah, I think that's
So,
a.
I mean, that's one way I think about things.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, I guess it's really hard for me to wrestle with because if you do believe if you do believe, oh wait, this person gets to kind of regain, they get to regain the moral authority, even if they're doing all these things, like where in that timeline do they even get to regain it? I feel like it might become arbitrary possibly because maybe even before they did all this environmental stuff, maybe before they had this um other outlook, or maybe there's different dimensions of it that's being added to their argument. Possibly even before all of that, they already were committed to never doing littering again, and they already decided that it's wrong. I'm wondering, is
Uh,
it possible to reconcile
yeah.
that?
Yes, I think you're just right that I mean maybe it is I don't know if arbitrary is the word. Maybe it's like grey or unclear or
Yeah,
vague
yeah.
when you get standing. I think that might be right. I
Mm-hmm.
think you're also right that the example I gave where I like start like joining these environmental activist groups,
Mm-hmm.
you might think, well, yeah, that's one thing that could restore your authority, but like surely that's like a demanding standard. Like, couldn't you just like come to care about the environment again?
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's right. I think I was giving a particularly dramatic example, but I think you're right that, maybe reinstating my commitment to the environment is just about me seeing the error of my ways and being committed to doing better in the future and coming to actually care about the environment. And you might think that's enough for me to regain my moral
Mm-hmm.
authority. And that could be enough too. I think if what you care about, not I mean not every account of hypocrisy will say this, but if you like the account that says you have to be committed to certain values to some degree in
I
order
see.
to have the right to call out other people for being deficiently committed to them, then you just say, well, look, there are lots of ways you can reinstate that commitment of yours. It can come online again.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be through like really hard work, like the example I gave.
Mm. I think there are people who are in certain positions or in roles that they might need to change their way, and they might need to maybe they need to start condemning something at one point, maybe like a politician or something like that. And I'm wondering, is it then immoral for them, or do they still, maybe they lose that blame, but I guess in that role possibly they might have to be recommitted to
Yeah.
a different way and a different outlook on things.
Yeah. I think this also brings up, there are multiple things you might be pointing to here. I think one really interesting thing the example points to is that there are cases where like it might just be really important I blame someone for something,
Hmm.
right? As you say, if I'm a public official and someone's done something horrendous and the community really needs to hear from me, or if no one is as powerful and impervious as me, and I'm the only one who really can afford to call them out publicly without getting punished for it in some way,
I see.
then you might think, yeah, like someone's going to blame this person and condemn them publicly, and you're the best one to do it.
Hmm.
And then suppose you say, ooh, but like I'm not really committed to these values, or I'm kind of a hypocrite. Like I've done the same thing this person's done in the
Yeah.
past, and so it would be critical for me. So I think what that points out is that hypocritical blame, even though there's always something wrong or bad about it, it's not that badness or wrongness is not decisive in all cases.
Hmm.
There are some cases where you don't really have the standing to blame in the sense that you don't have the moral right to blame someone, but all things considered, there's a strong justification for you doing it anyway
Hmm.
uh, because the stakes are so high or something.
I see.
So the person can still claim, hey, you're blaming me. That's not so nice because you're a hypocrite now. And
Yeah.
you say, yeah, but there were good reasons for me to be a hypocrite today. Uh, and so I think that's the right thing to say about those cases, maybe.
Hmm. And then I wanted to touch back on, I was going to mention this earlier, kind of our legal system in which, we lose certain rights and we lose certain privileges after committing felonies. Like we can lose gun rights in America. We can lose, voting rights. I was wondering, um, is it always, kind of, I think part of it is kind of to show that uh, I guess it's a difference in how they effectuate certain things. Okay, so my question is, do you think somebody also not only do they lose the blame to the ability to blame someone else because they lose moral authority, but do you think they can also lose the ability to help the other side? As in, like, if someone litters and then now do they lose the ability to kind of support these organizations that are anti-littering?
Ah, that's really interesting. I think I don't know. I think the context can go different ways,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's actually quite interesting. So I think this comes up in some cases when people talk about forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do something really wrong to me, I don't know, maybe you like, you know, there's like libel or slander against me, you ruin my reputation, or you do something else that really wrongs me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and now suppose I need to like pick up my life and improve things.
Mm-hmm.
And you say to me, "Oh, I'll help." Right? I'll start like releasing all these good things about you so people can know the truth. I think it would be understandable there for me to say, "No, you don't be involved. You go away."
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, you might think, "I'm the victim of your wrongdoing. Like I get to decide
Mm-hmm.
to some degree whether you or how you kind of help make up for it." Um, so I think in those kinds of cases, I'm tempted to say, but you've like personally wronged someone, um, that it's the victim's call. I mean, they can't like make you do anything. That we shouldn't say it's totally their
Yeah.
call. They send you on a quest to get like some dragon eggs to make enough to them. Like they can't just like make that kind of call for you to do anything. But they certainly get to exclude you from some of the remedial processes or some of the rebuilding their lifestyle processes, I think, if
Mm-hmm.
that's their call and you should respect that decision. With wrongs that are kind of like more general and the person's not really a victim per se, like in your case where, you've been littering and maybe polluting the environment and then you want to help people improve the environment. I mean, I think there, maybe they'll doubt your sincerity at
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
But I think it would be too harsh to say, no, you don't have the right to be part of this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, because I think, yeah, there's a difference between your kind of right to blame others, which is like imposing a cost on them. It's kind of unfair to them somehow if you've done it yourself
Mm-hmm.
and you haven't reinstated that commitment, then you're blaming them. But I think it's not being unfair to anyone
Mm-hmm.
to help with the environment. And I think it's actually a really good thing that you're trying to turn over a new moral page in your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
So there, it would be too harsh. Again, if it's not just like a personal victim case where I think, yeah, maybe you just don't have the right, and that depends on whether the victim says yes. Yes. If it's a case like the littering case, then I think you should have the right to improve, is my sense. I
Yeah.
know what you think about.
Yeah. Because I was gonna mention that because I see, like, for therapists, psychologists, or even people who go to prisons and they try to talk to the people and say, like, I want to kind of help you. Sometimes, and a good amount of the times, the people are actually, people who did past convicts or people who were also criminals at one point, and then at one point they realize, oh, my life is so messed up, and then, like, I've done these things, and then they they go through prison and they go through rehabilitation. I'm kind of, a part of me believes like that would be an incredible testimony to share to, prison mates, and I feel like it's kind of hard for me to reconcile, but I feel like the effect maybe can possibly outweigh other moral stances that people have on whether they're able to effectuate change. But I don't know. I'd like to know your stance on that.
So on, I'm trying to, sorry, I'm trying to like draw the which lesson I should comment on there about, um, is the idea something about, we should give people sort of ample room to improve themselves or try and
Um,
give them like the ever-present possibility of making things up in some way.
It's whether kind of the effectiveness of someone who like as I mentioned earlier, the effectiveness of someone who's a past convict who's now giving advice to like people who are,
Oh, I
convicted,
see.
whether their effectiveness
I,
can kind of like it will outweigh what other people will think about it morally.
yeah, so I actually think there are cases where sometimes if you've done something horrible and you try and warn other people about against doing it,
Hmm.
there are some cases where, as we've seen, it's really hypocritical if you do that in a certain kind of way, right? If you blame them. So, with an adultery case, if I've been a serial adulterer and I blame someone else for cheating on their spouse, that doesn't seem okay. But in a case where I kind of say, look, I am a massive failure in this domain. I've learned so many lessons. Far be it for me to judge you, but like, here's what I can say about why it's really what I've learned. And I kind of share that with you. I think that is not me being hypocritical. And you might even think maybe you'll take it more seriously hearing it from me than someone who has a perfect track record.
Yeah.
Because kind of what would they know about how bad this can get and how it pollutes your soul or something? And you might think something similar is happening in the criminal case, where the person says, "Look, I've done these wrongs, I've been through them, and I've learnt from them, and I can share this kind of first-hand experience I have."
Hmm.
And you might think something more effective or effective about that that can get through to people rather than someone just saying, with a perfect track record, you shouldn't break the law.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I think that's definitely something to think about, and yeah, I wanted to finally then move on to kind of my last topic that I was going to bring about, which is um so what do you define as kind of friendship? Because I know, Aristotle defined it with, friendship of utility, friendship of pleasure, and then the highest one that he thought was the friendship of virtue. What are your kind of outlooks on what it really means to be friends?
Yeah, good. So I think, as you said, Aristotle thinks the highest form of friendship, the one that most clearly contributes to or helps us actualize our own flourishing,
Hmm.
um, is what he calls the character friendships or the friendships of virtue, where it's kind of like a mutual apprenticeship in moral character, and we're both kind of helping each other
Hmm.
to realize virtue and be like the best, morally best people we can be. Um, I mean, you might think maybe you think that's a good ideal. A lot of people think it's true. It's the highest form of friendship. It's never been clear to me that's right.
Hmm.
Because I think you can see a lot of friendships that look like true, genuine, good friendships between people that aren't particularly good at helping people realize their moral flourishing. So, like, one example, which is probably a bit too dated for you, is Thelma and Louise, which is an
Uh,
old school movie with two women. I guess if people who haven't seen that, the idea there's kind of honor among thieves
mhm,
or something to that degree might be a bit more intuitive. So I think why would we say those things are friendship? Well, I think they have a lot of features that people think are really important for friendships. So even if the two friends aren't particularly morally admirable and they don't care about other people as well as they perhaps should, they can still have a deep and genuine care for one another and
mhm,
really be interested in helping one another achieve their ambitions or achieve their goals or achieve their aims. Um, they can, see that other person as a source of value for their own sake, not just as a source of value for like getting ahead in life. They can really cherish spending time together. They
mhm,
can transform each other's conceptions of what's valuable in life. They can be open to seeing the world differently through each other's eyes. I think those are really important features of a deep and meaningful friendship. And I think you can have them between people where they're not entirely virtuous,
mhm.
perhaps even quite morally imperfect.
Yeah.
Um, and so I feel like the kind of project of building virtue or the idea that friendships of the highest form happen between like more virtuous people. Um, I mean, maybe those are better relationships in moral respects, but I don't know if they're better qua friendships,
Mhm.
um, is my thought.
Do you think, like, I know some people, they weigh how good a friendship is by how secure it is, like how likely it is to kind of break within certain circumstances. And I think maybe part of the reason why people like to say like the friendship of utility is weaker than friendship of virtue is because they'll think of an example of like someone with someone who's friends because they borrow a lawnmower, but then after they get their own lawnmower, which probably people should do at some point. I'm not sure, but maybe that friendship kind of breaks down a bit, and they have less of a reason to kind of see each other. Would you say security of friendship kind of plays into maybe how good a friendship is, or do you think that's kind of
Yeah,
irrelevant?
definitely. Definitely. And I think, I mean, I think Aristotle is right for what it's worth,
Hmm.
that friendships of utility and friendships of pleasure, it looks like there, you don't really care about the person for their own sake or care about them.
Hmm.
They're kind of an instrument or a means by which you get the pleasure or the thing of utility.
Hmm.
So I think I just agree with him that friendship has to involve that valuing the person themselves
Hmm.
and not just what they're getting you or valuing them instrumentally. Um, so I think that has to be correct. And I
Okay.
think there has to be some sort of, I think you called it security, but maybe like robustness involved. So actually, there's a
Yeah.
philosopher called Philip Pettit, and he describes friendship as a robustly demanding good.
Hmm.
What does he mean by that? He kind of means that if I'm really your friend, I don't just give you, I'm not just disposed to like give you care and support in this world
Hmm.
or as things actually are. I'm also such that I would keep doing that even in like variations of our actual circumstances where it was really
Hmm.
difficult or inconvenient for me to care about you. This is kind of orientation I need to have towards you where I think people would say I'm like not a fair weather friend. I'm not just disposed to stick by you when everything's easy and peachy. I'm a foul weather friend. I'll stick by you even when like during the tough times.
Hmm.
And I do think that's important for friendship. Actually, this reminds me of part of the reason why it's not obvious to me that friendships need to be kind of morally perfect or like very morally virtuous to be genuine friendships.
Hmm.
It's a kind of paradox of loyalty that comes up sometimes. So
Hmm.
some people think loyalty seems important for friendship. I take it. But there's this worry that, like, well, is loyalty a virtue or not? And some people say, you know, if I wanted to ask you to do something for me,
Hmm.
but it was what you morally should do, I don't need to ask for your loyalty. I can just say to you, hey, you morally should stick by me here. But suppose I want to ask you to do something a bit morally dodgy for me.
Yeah.
Then I'll appeal to your loyalty, right? So it looks like we sometimes, if we're close friends, so it sometimes looks like we appeal to loyalty precisely when the moral reasons won't support us.
Hmm.
And so that might lead you to, if you are persuaded by that, you might think maybe there are times where like true loyalty or like really being someone's friend could mean you do something a bit morally questionable.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
So
um,
we can put limits there and we can say, maybe a good friend wouldn't ask you to do something horrible in their name they don't stand for. There
yeah.
are lots of, I think, qualifications and caveats we can put in there.
Hmm.
And I certainly don't want to be advertising this idea that the best friends are like horrible people. I don't think that's necessarily
Yeah.
true. I just think there can be, and I'm not the only one who thinks this for what it's worth,
Hmm.
but other philosophers think it too, that the kind of core values of friendship. They don't like the sort of aiming at mutual virtuousness doesn't have to always be among them, or it's not as essential or central to it.
Yeah. So I think kind of going on that. I think. Do you think? I don't think it's morally wrong necessarily to have friends with bad people. I'm under that belief. However, I would say there's definitely a danger that comes with it, possibly. Um, do you think that? Yeah. Do you think there definitely is there definitely is a danger, and I think sociologists kind of embrace an idea of neoliberalism, which is that's a little bit different, but when it comes to the danger of uh, having friends who you think are morally wrong, do you think that you are endorsing at least a little part of it if you're friends with them, or do you think those things are kind of detached?
Yeah, so for what it's worth, even though and I think you know this from reading that paper of mine,
Mm-hmm.
even though I do think, um, Aristotle's wrong that the only like the highest and genuine form of friendship has to be between virtuous people, even though I think that's too strong. Plenty of us are far from virtuous and sometimes do questionable things for our friends, but we still have these rich and rewarding relationships. Um, I still think that morally speaking,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's plenty to criticize in someone who is friends with, knowingly friends with someone else who's a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so even if I think that just thinking about friendship, there's more to friendship than morality. I think from the moral perspective, we certainly can criticize
Mm-hmm.
people for the kinds of friends they choose. And I think you pointed towards some reasons we might criticize them. I think there's a lot of legitimate avenues by which you could criticize them, but some would be, I think, more clear cut to me than others. So the one you gave just now, was it about like the risk of corrupting yourself,
Yeah,
or
I
they might
think,
rub off?
yeah, like whether, I mean, not that whether there be a risk, or maybe, or if there's a moral issue of someone actively just engaging, knowing that they'll definitely, or they might, corrupt themselves.
Yeah, so I think there is a risk that if you're friends with someone bad, you yourself could become bad.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of playing fast and loose with your kind of like your soul or something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that may well be a risk.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't think it's one that should be too overblown. I mean,
Yeah.
for one thing, um, I think it's Lynn McFall who says this, that all sorts of people can risk leading us down bad moral paths,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even like good people can get to a bad fix, and we have to do something a bit morally questionable to help them. And I think she says, I think the line I like of hers is, the only way to fully protect yourself against this will be to take up like permanent refuge in your closet and just
Yeah.
like hide in a cupboard and not interact with anyone. Um, so I think that we shouldn't overplay the fact that just being out in the world and interacting with people in general exposes us to this risk.
Mm-hmm.
I admit that it's a stronger risk when you're friends with someone. And Kathy Mason, another philosopher, says she has this view. I think she thinks that when you're friends with someone, you have a duty to take them seriously.
Yeah.
I'm not sure she's right if we have to take our friends seriously across the board. I think we have to take them seriously like enough of the time. Otherwise, we're not really being good friends to them. But
Mm-hmm.
if your friend has, I don't know, if your friend has some questionable beliefs about, I know, the earth being flat or something, maybe you could take them, like, you could take their love of a video game seriously without taking the flat earth thing seriously. So I think you're just right. It's a worry that we can open ourselves up to corruption if we're friends with people
Mm-hmm.
who are themselves corrupt. But I think we shouldn't kind of oversell
Yeah.
the risk there, because I think, if you have lots of other friends who aren't corrupt, that's a kind of like buffer or protective mechanism. Uh, and, sometimes people are friends with people who have like really bad sides, but they kind of turn a blind eye to that. And that's just not part of what organizes or informs the friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think also some people have grandparents, and their grandparents might have maybe some old style views that have stuck around that
Mm-hmm.
the grandchildren think are kind of morally questionable. Maybe there's some old school like sexist assumptions grandpa makes or something. But you might say, well, that doesn't mean I can't keep up a meaningful relationship with my grandpa, that I'm going to become sexist, right? Because that's
Yeah.
just not part of like what's informing the kind of true friendship I've developed with him, spending time with him, and we just don't talk about that element of it.
Yeah. I think. Yeah, definitely. So like, I think if someone has like, I don't know, a family member who has issues, or if someone has like a friend who has issues, uh, I feel like more people probably would say that that like you choosing friends with issues is probably more serious. But do you think I don't know, do you think that's true, or
I totally get the force of that. I think it's true in a particular way, probably. I mean, people say you pick your friends, you don't pick your family.
yeah.
And so there's a sense in which if I choose to be friends with someone who's like, I don't know, beating up homeless people or something awful, right?
Yeah.
Or something horrendous. I'm sorry if that was too horrendous, but I want to think of something obviously horrendous.
Mhm.
If I choose to be friends with someone who does that for fun, you might think, why are you friends with that person?
Mhm.
Like, there's going to be a bit of moral puzzlement there. But if my brother or my grandfather does that, you don't kind of immediately start judging my
Mhm.
character or start questioning my quality of judgment,
Mhm.
because I didn't choose to have that person as a brother or that person as a grandfather. So I think that has to be right. Um, but you might also think, maybe this is controversial, but you might also think, as well as having the relationships you do with your family, your mother's your mother, your brother's your brother,
Mm-hmm.
you can also choose to have friendships with your family members or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I think some people, they're friends with their siblings, right? They don't just see them on family holidays or keep in touch with them to keep the operation of the family smooth and to organize Thanksgiving. They also
Mm-hmm.
genuinely like spending time with their siblings and learning from them and talking to them and, think they're valuable people to be around. And in that case, I'd say it's not just your brother, it's your friend,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think that's why I was thinking in the grandfather case that you're not just spending time with your grandfather because he's your grandfather, you're also sort of friends with
Yeah.
him. You have that kind of friendship relation going at the same time. So I think we can make that choice. We can
Mm-hmm.
choose whether or not to be friends with our siblings, even if we can't choose whether they're our siblings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess we can't. Yeah, we can't choose if they're. So I think what you were saying is like we can't. Obviously, we can't change our biology or whatever. We can't change uh, whether they're legally adopted into our family.
Yeah.
Um, but we can choose, I guess, to hang out with them, spend time with them, and build a like friendly relationship. Um,
And there are some people who
yeah,
disavow their families, right?
yeah,
Because they have profound moral disagreements with them. And whether or not you think they should do those things, I think they're not saying, I mean, maybe they will say that's not my brother, but like that's saying something false, right? As we've just said, you can't change the past.
hmm
But I think what they're really saying there is like, that's not someone I condone or accept or want to be in my life or I'm choosing to allow in my life. They're not my friend or anything like that.
hmm but I think would you say for the people who believe that kind of you should surround yourself with people who kind of share your values, and then share your morality. When it comes to kind of abandoning your that kind of friendly relationship with your siblings, do you think that might have like obviously that might have that will probably have like some damaging effect on them? And do you think that damaging effect, which can potentially cause more problems, do you think then for those people it should be the right thing to just stay with that kind of friendly relationship, even if your morals are like profoundly different?
Yeah, so this is a really good point. It's something I think I wasn't responsive to enough in my paper, where I'm kind of saying, hey, there's something morally criticizable about, but in the paper I say there's something morally criticizable about turning a blind eye to a friend's wrongdoing and staying
Mhm.
friends with them. Like, what are your moral priorities like? You're like, I'm just having fun with this person. I don't care they're doing horrible things. And I think I kind of say there, well, it also wouldn't have been obviously good to stay friends with them in the hope of improving them because it's not clear then you're really being their friend. It looks like you're pretending to be their friend because so you can morally improve them. Um, Maybe that's something you should do, but I'm not sure it's being friends with them. But I think the worry I have with what I argued that what you just said is bringing out is I don't want to support like in a unqualified way. I don't want to support this idea that if someone has different values to you, you should cut them out of your life.
Yeah.
Like way too strong. And I think that it's not a good thing if we have this kind of purity test
Mhm.
where someone, I mean, this is like, this is the resistance to Aristotle coming back, right? We should have this purity test where someone can only be a good friend to you if they're like morally perfect or near morally perfect, or if they meet some bar for moral virtue or moral goodness. That seems too strong. We're all morally imperfect.
Mhm.
And you might think, hey, if we're ever going to improve, the best chance is having, if I'm bad with the littering and you're really environmentally active, it's good if we're friends. And then maybe there's some shortcoming you have. I have the corresponding, you
Mhm.
know, advantage that I can help you through. And we can help not just improve each other morally, but just improve each other's lives in other respects.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm conscientious and you're lazy and I can help you with that. So I I think in general we shouldn't be too quick to sort of cut people out of our lives because their values are different.
Mhm.
Because I think we deprive ourselves of opportunities, even if not to change, just to kind of see where other people are coming from and live in the world with people who have different starting points from our own.
Yeah, I think like touching on that, because I feel like it becomes a little bit scary when we get into like what if you have different political beliefs, or what if you think, I think for like quite a long time, I think it was up till 2019, I think, Korea was eating like dog meat was like decently popular, and then obviously, Westerners think like, oh, that's kind of a big issue because we've been domesticating dogs for like the last 1,000 years. I think it becomes a little bit scary for me, this idea of abandoning because of values, because I think there's a lot of values that one may not be too different, may not even harm someone else, but also I'm just don't see that as kind of sufficient reason to like kind of abandon friendships, and especially abandoning family in some way.
Yeah, I think that's true. And yeah, I mean, with your family, I know I think it always feels worse there in a way, abandoning your family.
Yeah,
I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because you feel like you owe your parents something. I mean, people have all have different views about.
I can't
Um,
really see them seem fine to find the why, but it just kind of, yeah, I don't know. It just kind of seems like that in some way, possibly because, well, I mean, maybe with parents is a little bit easier because they are the ones who were like the chief providers of you in some sense. Um, but then you think about siblings and it's like I wouldn't do that either. But yeah, I
yeah, I don't know. Maybe some people think, yeah, that your duties to them are like they're grounded somehow in the relationship you have to them,
mm-hmm,
if it's like valuable in that way. So even if you don't like your parents, as long as you have like a minimally valuable relationship with them,
mm-hmm.
that might be enough for you to have like obligations towards them.
Yeah,
Whereas you might think your obligations towards your friends, they tend to be a little more dependent upon things like how well you get along
mm-hmm,
and so on, and not just the fact that you have the relationship.
yeah. I mean, I guess with parents also in the medical and legal system, they have to provide certain duties of cares, like they have to donate certain things. Obviously, paying child support, and it's getting more and more expensive to kind of raise a kid nowadays, and especially in Korea where that's causing a large birth rate issue. I guess in some sense, I can see it a little bit more and more with the parents' side. That's kind of something that I still reconcile with, but I think I can empathize with that kind of side a little bit more than friendships in a way.
I think, yeah, I think a lot of people think that, I mean, if your parents do something awful, put that case aside. Let's just say you
Yeah,
find
yeah.
them really annoying or they have different values.
Mhm.
Some people think that abandoning them or, sort of estranging yourself from your parents under those
Mhm.
circumstances, some people think that that would just be really ungrateful or like a sort of sin of ingratitude because they've put so much into you and given you so much love and something, and now you're just saying goodbye because
Mhm.
the relationship's not doing it for you anymore. It's not obvious that's the only thing that would be wrong about abandoning them or becoming estranged or the main thing, but I think some people have said that it strikes them as being an instance of ingratitude.
I see. Yeah. Um, I think that was my last kind of set of questions
Okay.
within this subtopic, but thank you so much for coming, and
You're so welcome. Thank you for
yeah.
having me.